My interest is in Latin American art and in Latin American art in dialogue. There's an interesting thing that many of the countries in Latin America, although they share a common history, a common colonial history, and a common recent history, history of dictatorships, economic crisis, social uprisings, still they haven't been that much in contact. So I guess the importance of a project at the Global Art Initiative is that it's really going into deep into these different contexts and researching them and recognizing that we can create networks of knowledge which recognize the existing differences, the particularities, and that we can learn from these different knowledge, ways of solving problems, of confronting realities, of confronting crises, and ways of creating also new worlds and better worlds. In these terms, the Global Art Initiative puts everything at the same level and creates or attempts to create these connections. My background comes first from architecture and then from art. I've been curating at least for the past 10 years. I love exhibition making, and I really think exhibition making for me is a way of doing research on topics, not only topics that interest me, but I think topics that are relevant for a particular context or for society itself. For example, one called This Is Not America in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which played with the double idea that Puerto Rico is a free associated state of the United States, which is and is not America. There's a great work by Alfredo Jar from the 80s, which he presented in Times Square, and it was a big video saying, this is not America, America is also the whole of the continent, which I think continues to be as relevant in terms of expanding these geographies and creating new cartographies and redrawing the borders of map. Funnily enough, the United States has now become Latin America, with 1/4 of the population becoming almost 1/3 soon, being from Latin American origins. So I think we cannot continue talking of Latin America as we used to before. You know, I think Latin America is the continent. Other exhibitions have had a playful element which incorporates humor also as a way of dealing with reality. For example, Bananas is My Business, the South American way, which happened at the Museo Carmen Miranda, and which I co-curated with Julieta Gonzalez, where on one hand we worked with the archive of the museum, Carmen Miranda's papers, records, clothing, but we used it as a way to rethink South American stereotypes, you know, going beyond the image that Carmen Miranda had of being this kind of woman with bananas in her hair. No? Very recently I made an exhibition in London at the David Roberts Art Foundation, one called Friends of London, artists from Latin America in London from 1960X to 1970X, which explored many of these untold histories of artists who I call heroes or pioneers, who were in exile, many because of the dictatorships in their own country, and which do not form part of the official art histories, and nevertheless contributed to the art scene of the time and created works that in a way connected what they were before, what they were while being in Latin America, with the avant-gardes with whom they were in contact at the time. Or Juan Downey, who was a great video pioneer who traveled the Americas doing this project called Video Transaméricas, where he would tape the different communities who he encountered. And then in the main square of the city, he would show in the TVs the videos that he made of the previous city. So in a way, he was doing something similar to what we are trying to do now, you know, creating this kind of connections between different regions and giving visibility to each other. And here at Guggenheim, we also have our own history of our relationship with Latin America. There's works from the 40s, 50s, from Tamayo to Lucio Fontana. We have Mata, Roberto Mata. There's works from the 70s, 80s. We have Ana Mendieta in the collection. But much more interestingly, there was a 1966 exhibition which was curated by the then director, Thomas Esser, where he traveled through Latin America in 1965, very similar to what we're doing now, where he identified who were the major artists and players of the bigger countries of Latin America at the time. So he traveled through Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and brought back the best of the painting that was happening at the time. He was very interested in abstract painting. It's a pity that he didn't travel maybe 2 years later, because I think the panorama would have been totally another. The seeds of change were already happening when he visited, but they were still not strong enough. But let's think, Elio Oiticica had already in '65 presented the Parangolés at the exhibition at the Museum of Art Moderno in Rio. already from 65, but towards 68, big changes on what they call the dematerialization of art in Argentina were happening at the time. So Thomas Messer visits in this time before this change happened, I mean everywhere in the world. We're talking about 68. The catalog is fascinating because it has photos by Cornel Capra of not only studio visits, but also how the artists lived and worked, artists with their family, artists going to the bar, to the pub. So really trying also to show artists living in these foreign lands as also being or having a normal life, you know. Thomas Esser's The Emerging Decade will have an influence in the research we do. I don't think in terms of aesthetics of following the same line of research, but yes, in his interest in relating with Latin America. And what was also really interesting is that he was not only in contact with the main artists of the time, but also with the main critical thinkers. So in Colombia, there's letters that he wrote and responses that he got from Marta Traba, in Mexico with Matthias Geritz, and it continues in the whole of the continent. So I think it's a really interesting way of someone that was interested in expanding this dialogue and also in creating this kind of network of art production that was happening at the time. So I think it will be a fascinating journey. And in terms of what concerns us, which is art and artists and exhibitions and curating, I think we will be as democratic as possible in terms of not only going to the major countries, but also trying to, one, create connections between them, but also going to those countries which are less seen in terms of what's happening in these places, and in giving them visibility, and again in creating connections between them.